Hello students, this is Professor Davis and I'm creating this video for our online class. However, the PowerPoint presentation is for both the online and the face-to-face class. So obviously it'll be put up on the web courses in both. And you'll have instructions to use or not to use or how we go about it. In class, of course, we'll be using this particular presentation as well. Okay, let's see here. I've got to go to my screen and I hope it shows up all right. We're talking today about genres. By the way, this is just a reminder to bring your textbook to class. I also mentioned a great option is to use the Kindle version. There's a few differences in the way it's laid out and all like that, but the content is there for you. I have both. I know how it is carrying books, so it's nicer to have a little iPad. You could put all your books on your iPad. I think that's wonderful. In our threshold concepts, your textbook is set up to chapters, of course, that have broad themes, and your class modules will follow to some degree in the pattern of those themes. We're beginning with the chapter on threshold concepts, but our first question is, why are we writing? This course deals with the purpose of our writing. There are two very important words to remember. Both of them make up some of the threshold concepts. One is genre. Genre refers to categories or the types of writing that is done, and we're going to discuss that in this PowerPoint. Exigence refers to the purpose, and they are related. You're going to have a non-graded discussion assignment. In 100 words or more, create a thread that answers the two following questions. In the face-to-face class, we'll discuss them in the classroom, and so I won't put up a graded discussion board for it. But for the online class, you'll have a discussion for it. The two questions are, what would your world be like if there was no writing? And what would you miss the most? Content, and which is what writing is all about, is about content. As a matter of fact, my approach to grading writing is, and the approach of this class is to be concerned more about the content of the writing than just the grammar itself. So let's talk about why we write and why do we study writing. When we talk about studying the writing, we're going to talk more about that in our literacy section. What are some reasons why we write? We talk about being a professional. It could be for business, or it could just be simply to share ideas. You might just like to write as a catharsis, or you might like to write, as pleasure. You might enjoy creativity, creating poetry. I happen to love poetry and have published poetry in the UK, and here in the States, I've got a little book of poems that I've written. However, my favorite poem, I'm going to throw this in if I got just a minute here. I'll throw in the first verse or so of a poem that is full of meaning, and this is something that we talk about. It's called The Man in the Glass. I don't remember the author, but it goes like this. It says, if you get what you want in your struggle for self, and the world makes you king for a day, just go to a mirror and look at yourself and see what that man has to say. For it isn't your father or mother or wife whose judgment upon you must pass, but the person whose verdict counts most in your life is the one staring back from the glass. That is a tremendous poem. There's a lot of reasons why you can write. We basically write based on certain constructs that become our threshold concepts that we're going to be learning in class. We use thinking to produce symbols and words. And think about it, words are only symbols. The oldest kind of words are symbols, like the Egyptian hieroglyphics or the Sanskrit script from thousands of years ago, were just ways of communicating ideas. And that's what words are all about. We communicate ideas and we communicate thoughts. All symbols, that means all writing and all our communication besides our oral, all of our communication must be preceded by our thinking. And what we're doing is, when we're writing or communicating orally in other ways, we are sharing our thinking. So our thinking is constructed by language, and then in our mind, words in our mind. But our thinking, our language, and our words shape meaning. And the meaning can be true, it can be false, it can be questioned, it can be challenged, it can be invented, it can be reinvented. For example, what you believe to be true today can be changed tomorrow. I'm sure a lot of us have had that experience. And actually, I hope you get some of that in this class, that maybe you'll rethink some things. And maybe it's worth changing, maybe not, but at least you're going to rethink them. The word construct is a verb. Con in the Spanish means with, structure means shape, and construct as a noun means a thing that is constructed or built. Constructs are mental frameworks for ideas. These are the words or images from which we create meanings. Such words as justice, wealth, politics, religion, love, money. These are all concepts that we have. Again, notice they can be true, and you see this Venn diagram here. There's these propositions are based upon some form of truth, and whether it's reality or just in your mind. And then they're also based on your beliefs, whether they're reality or not. And you can have poorly justified beliefs. You can even have poorly justified true beliefs. And all of this represents what we call knowledge. How would you write the following sentence using commas and punctuation? Grammar is important. I said we're going to be looking at content, and you will, in your rubrics, you will usually have at least a small point or so reference to grammar. Here was an example. How would you write the following sentence using commas and punctuations? Woman without her man is nothing. So the professor gave this to his students, and the male student wrote, woman without her man is nothing. Well, actually, I said that wrong. Woman, comma, woman without her man is nothing. And then the female student wrote, woman without her man is nothing. So words can make a difference. In English, we have a word for truck, and I think over in England the same thing is called a Tory. I'm not sure, but that might be right. We talk about our garage over here, and over there they call it something else. I don't remember. The trunk of the car here is the trunk. Over there it's called the boot. And so there's different kinds of words. Another concept that we'll be looking at, or these are some of the concepts we'll be looking at. Genres, rhetorical situations are how people, texts talk about people, and we're going to deal quite a bit with that. And we're also going to be talking about argument as a conversation. Our constructs for thinking and writing are based on these threshold concepts, and these are basic ways we engage in the conversation by using genres, participating in rhetoric, and by creating and shaping meaning to get things done. That's one of the big emphases that we will see, and it's a big emphasis of your book, Writing About Writing, and the whole concept of English compositions in 1 and 2 are really about how do we get things done. How is our writing impacted by prior experience? How does it help us create meaning to get things done? There's always some constraints when it comes to writing, for example, and we'll look at some of those. Good writing is dependent on the writer, the reader, though that's your audience, your situations, the rhetorical situations, and there's parts of that where we talk about the technology, and of course the purpose or why it's being used. Writing, however, is a process, and in order to be a good writer, you have to be a good thinker. All writers have more to learn, and writing is not perfectible, are two concepts that we will be discussing. Genres are types of text that are recognizable, and readers and writers need to meet the needs of the rhetorical situation in which they function. In other words, you have to match up with your genre and your situation. Examples, of course, are like emails. When do you use an email? When do you don't? Reports, newspaper articles, screenwriting. Just for a moment here in class, name a few of the genres that you use on a daily basis. What are some you use at work? What are some that you use for fun? Genres are categories of text that are recognizable to readers and writers that meet the needs of rhetorical situations. I just mentioned that. Here are frequently used genres that are mentioned in your book. Texting, very frequent. I think they now have a dictionary for texters, for us old folks that don't know what rolling on the floor is, or some of these acronyms that I still don't know. Emails, a genre, I use that one frequently. Lecture notes, academic papers, research papers. A PowerPoint here is a lecture, that's a genre. List, instant messaging, a lot of people use that. I still use that, learning to use that. Status message updates, reading notes, these are all different kinds of, these are the 10 most frequently written genres. The 10 most valued, which people, whether they use them frequently or not, but they are certainly the ones that matter and that people want to learn or need to learn or may have to learn. People want to learn texting because it's our new form of communication. You have to learn how to write academic papers. I have to know how to make lecture notes. You have to know how to do research papers. We all probably know email. Some folks don't. If you're going to work, you need resumes. If you need lists, my wife has designed her own little shopping list spreadsheet that she uses, that she always takes her list to the grocery store. You make lists. I don't know, letters have been replaced by email, but still some people write letters. I think the post office probably lost a lot of money on letter writing. Journals and diaries are frequent among people, including students and business people, and in government. Diaries or journals or reports or there's different ways you might call them, but they're required. Forms, there's all kinds of different forms that are required. And the one thing to consider about genres is that they're not only associated with rhetorical situations, which we're going to talk about later, but with the type of discourse, communities, or practices in which they're used. For example, what do you find in academics? Research, reports, essays, journals, books. In business and academics, you're going to also find financial reports, policies and procedures manuals, email, reference books, hazmat instructions, training tutorials, and more. Personal genres, email, texting, photos, blogs, books. Here's a question that we can take a moment to discuss. In your lifetime, can you think of a new genre that you have recently encountered? Emails are not all that old. They came along with computers and the internet. Can you think of one that you've not used yet in college? For example, dissertations. There are theoretical problems, empirical problems, and practical problems. These are the three assumptions about the intended use of writing and how they direct our approach to writing. Theoretical problems are problems of values, such as religious values, political values, things that create arguments. Arguments and debate falls in those categories, and there are principles and concepts. These theoretical problems are usually based on principles and concepts. Whether true or not true, they're generally things that are believed, and they do form practices, and they do make up a lot of the issues that people address inside of their discourse communities in society, when society becomes a discourse community, or in politics can be a discourse community, or religion is these are major discourse communities where theoretical problems abound and are often in conflict, and we see that politics and religion are frequently in conflict. Society and religion, and of course society is made up of both religious and political, and not too many neutral people, I don't think. Maybe some, but not too many. It would be nice. Empirical problems concern facts that can be observed or tested, like genres include reports and scientific experiments. Your practical problems require decision making and choices, and so these are big in business. They include different kinds of writing, from email to policy statements, proposals, statements of work. These are, when we look at the different kinds there, just remember that each of the genres that we're talking about in forms of communication are how do we get things done to solve these problems, or issue the problems, or create knowledge, or shape meaning. So genres assume these in our when it comes to our approach to writing, and directs how we approach our writing. Some of the things that we have to consider is our channel of communication. Is it formal or informal? Formal communication would be more likely used in business and academics, and an informal, but a lot of businesses today can be very informal. Personal communication is often informal. What technology do we use? Is it written, audio, visual, and what other kinds of technologies are coming along? What are those heliograms, or whatever those kinds of things is? What's the purpose? Is it to inform? Is it a report? Is it to change behavior? So let's discuss this. Why does matching up the right genre, that is your category of writing, matter to the kind of problem that needs to be solved? One example is, what genre would you use or would you select if the problem is urgent? Let's discuss that in class. We'll discuss it face to face. Online, I'm going to create a little thread, non-gradable thread, that you can answer that question in a brief manner. Second discussion question, again, I will create a thread for the online students. What considerations would you make to decide on what kind of genre you would use to solve a problem. Actually, I gave some here, and we can talk about that. You can kind of just maybe make some comments about who is your audience. Is it urgent? What's the makeup of your discourse community? Is the audience going to respect or resist your writing? How much time do you need? How much information is available? You have a reading assignment for week 3. Read Stuart Green, Argument is a Conversation, and then read Richard Straub, Responding to other students' writings.